Think about this. I've covered at length how 10 years ago the trans movement was the subculture of the era. Picked up by teens and trendsetters globally, the play on gender started as a quirky alt lifestyle and ended up in full-on kamikaze mode, with supporters celebrating men in women's change rooms and murderers killing CEOs.
In the end, it's just us, sassy.
But as I've said to many of my friends, you know a movement is no longer cool when your school is flying the flag. I mean this literally. To students, the least cool people on the planet are teachers and school administrators. And when they even start flying your flag, you know you've landed with both feet in Dorkville. Liberals used to be cool. When I was a teenager in the 90s and 2000s, Bill Clinton was this alternative playboy who believed in some sort of greater good that stuffy corporate Republicans just didn't understand. In Canada, the Liberals have held more prime ministerships than any other party. Today in Canada, liberal is basically socialism, but it wasn't always that way. Jean Chrétien was a smart, sagacious politician with strong economic discipline and a pragmatist who stood against the first Iraq War. In the US, it's more complicated. Republicans have held the presidency more than the Democrats, but some of that is likely due to the fact that in 1854, when the Republican Party was conceived, it was a progressive party, advocating for the abolishment of slavery. Today, the Liberals and the Democrats shift in tone from the cool progressives to yelling violent maniacs, making the remarkable transition from counterculture to the thing the counterculture is rebelling against. In my head, I imagine attending a liberal convention is not that much different than discussing all the people who are breaking the rules at an HOA meeting.
Like, I don't know, I've been a Democrat my whole life, but Democrats used to be a lot cooler. Yeah, we were listening to rock and roll and doing drugs, and then we used to laugh at the right. Like, oh, look at these stiffs going to church and burning rap records. Then a little time went by, and liberals got pretty queefy. Yeah? They were like the free speech people, and now they're like, don't joke about this, don't say that word, and you're like, man. Then you look at the right, and they're like, we're saying retard over here. Just like, yeah.
In this episode, we'll discuss the Liberal and Democratic Party's descent from cool popular kids to high school hall monitor. We'll discover the similarities between liberals and the Westboro Baptist Church, the increase in violence on the left, and finally, how the left is increasingly identifying themselves by their ideology. If you think these conversations are as fun as I do, hit that like and subscribe button. My name is Kris, and this is The Think Report. There's a meme in Canada that Canadians don't really have a culture. We're descendants from Europeans, but we aren't Europeans. We're similar to Americans, but we aren't. We don't have much cultural food or unique traditions that aren't also American or UK traditions. We have maple syrup and ketchup chips and a slight accent in both English and French. The US kind of has the same problem. In North America, we have a thin culture, meaning it lacks the density and continuity of somewhere like France or Italy or Japan, where the culture goes back centuries and is tied to land, language, food, and tradition in a way that's genuinely distinct. This is a problem. As a species, we need to feel like we belong. There needs to be some group identifier that brings us all together, something that we can be proud to identify with. As much as I criticize tribalism for the senseless things that groups will identify with, like skin color, it is the natural way to be. Quebec and Indigenous will fervently defend their language and traditions, and it makes sense. The southern US has their country roots to be proud of, but the rest of us, what are we defending? Our whiteness? Obviously that's silly. A North American interpretation of European food? That makes us the Rachel Ray to Europe's Gordon Ramsay. So in North America, we do have our freedom. In Canada and the US, even that is disappearing though. We have less buying power than our parents, and our parents have less buying power than their parents. Our freedoms of speech are being attacked. What's left? Ideologies? But there is a difference between identifying as an ideology and identifying as an American or a Canadian. You can hate an idea and you can hate an ideology, and that is all part of healthy debate. However, if you hate a country, you hate the people. In extreme cases, that would be racism. If you hated Mexicans, for example, because they were born in Mexico, that would be racism. If you hated communism or capitalism because of the environment it created, that would be logical and reasonable for debate. But for the vast majority of us, when we criticize things like the trans movement, we are criticizing the ideology, not the people. But the people don't take it that way. When your ideology becomes your identity, you've backed yourself into a corner, because now it's not just an idea, now it's you. And when the idea gets challenged, you don't hear disagreement, you hear an attack. So what do? You'll defend that identity at all costs, even if it makes you sound incredibly stupid. Facts don't matter anymore. Admitting you're wrong would mean admitting your existence is wrong. So you double down, and that's how you end up defending nonsense, like you're defending your ability to exist. These two things are not the same unless you make your ideology your identity. There is certainly a rise in violence on the left. Historically, in almost every large protest, which is usually sponsored by the left, comes with a garnish of violence and vandalism. But recently there's been something different, something a little bit more nefarious at stake. When I try to evaluate political violence initiated by either the left or the right, I have a hard time trusting the data. All of the data seems to come from the left-leaning research publications. The quality of the journalism is quite questionable, from PBS citing sources like the Southern Poverty Law Center, an increasingly unreliable resource, to studies that attempt to record incidents but don't allow you to audit the methodology. Don't get me wrong, it's not that I don't like the answer, it's that I can't verify it. So the best I could find were studies that openly acknowledged that there is no comprehensive, unbiased accounting of political violence, one that's free from selection bias based on the researcher's geography or ideological bubble. So instead, we'll create our own proxy. I'm using assassination attempts against US presidents as a proxy here. The US axis tracks assassinations and assassination attempts. The x-axis tracks time, grouped by decade. For the most recent part, the numbers are fairly even across parties. The two most notable recent spikes are Obama, who faced 11 attempts, and Trump, whose term isn't even halfway over yet and already has 8 attempts on his life. Using this as a proxy for political violence broadly, I think it's reasonable to conclude that it runs fairly even, with the most recent spike against Trump being driven by actors on the left. This shouldn't surprise anyone. The vast majority of people, left or right, are reasonable and oppose political violence. Those who commit it represent the fringes, the far left and the far right alike. And both exhibit a detachment from reality that transcends political affiliation. Mental illness is apolitical. So, according to analysts and commentators, several factors contribute to the rise in political violence on the left. Loss of cultural coolness is the first one. Comedian Andrew Schulz noted that the Democratic Party has lost its coolness factor and its grip on American culture, with many people now finding the party less reliable. The yelling and aggressive rhetoric is another one. A 2025 opinion piece in the LA Times suggests that the party has gone from being seen as cool to bearing the burden of lecturing the party, with some members resorting to or mirroring aggressive and vulgar language. Shift in tactics is another. Recent trends show that some Democrats are adopting more aggressive tactics, with reports showing that they have used more profanity on social media compared to their political opponents to generate media attention. Authenticity and relatability concerns are another. Concerns exist that Democrats are struggling to appear relatable to the working class, while some voters perceive politicians in the party as shifting from focusing on economic issues to prioritizing social issues. Some observers say this change is an attempt to stay relevant by fighting back. I see it as an attempt to regain control out of desperation. The Westboro Baptist Church is one of the most reviled organizations in America. Fewer than 100 members, mostly one extended family, and yet they've shaped national conversations around free speech, funeral protest laws, and LGBTQ rights. A group that could fit in a high school gymnasium, punching so far above its weight that Congress has debated them. Sound familiar? As the activist left has grown more convicted in its crusade against what it considers illiberal viewpoints, the structural similarities to groups like the Westboro Baptist Church have become harder to ignore. They're both essentially immune to consequences. Protests make them more convicted. Condemnation doesn't register as a reason to stop. It confirms that they're flying over their target. There's no external pressure with enough conviction to slow the movement down. They both target high visibility moments for maximum impact. Westboro shows up at military funerals, celebrity deaths, pride events, and natural disasters. The modern activist left also shows up whenever a camera is pointed. Campus speakers, shareholder meetings, award shows, Luigi Mandione court dates, the list goes on. The tactic is the same. Attach your message to something people already care about. There is a deep hypocrisy at the core of Westboro that doesn't get talked about enough. Jesus was essentially a peaceful hippie. He spent his time with prostitutes, tax collectors, lepers, the people society had written off. He preached love, humanity, forgiveness. And yet, here's Westboro screaming slurs at the parents of dead soldiers. The left has the same problem, a movement built on compassion, equity, and inclusion, and yet the delivery is often so vicious and so self-righteous, so willing to destroy individuals publicly, that nobody receives the message. They just receive the aggression.
This is what was thrown at police today, and I think Melbourne has had a gutful. These are people who come, they're not coming to protest. I heard the Chief Commissioner talk about protesters having compassion and care for others. This is certainly not what has been displayed today. People came to pick a fight with the police.
The content gets lost in the cruelty of the delivery every single time. Even the signs are the same. America is doomed. Israel is doomed. Jews stole the land. God hates Israel. These are easily protest signs for Westboro Baptist Church or the left. For both groups, the method doesn't just undermine the message, it becomes the message. And what they're actually broadcasting is the punishment of people who disagree. So where does this leave us? The left didn't start here. It started as the counterculture, the cool kids, the ones pushing back against the establishment. And somewhere along the way, it became the establishment, the hall monitor, the HOA meeting, the flag flying in the school lawn. The irony is that the tactics they've adopted, the screaming, the public destruction of individuals, the immunity to consequences, the high visibility performance, are the same tactics used by one of the most hated organizations in America. And just like Westboro, the message, whatever merits it might have, is completely buried under the delivery. Nobody is listening. When your ideology becomes your identity, you stop being persuadable. You stop being interesting, and you eventually stop being relevant. The counterculture doesn't follow you anymore. It forms against you. Think about that.